And hello everyone, welcome back to another nim tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about if statements. If statements are used to add logic to your program. You can make your program make decisions. For example, when you go to the store and you're like, should I buy the bar 1 or the lunch bar? That's a choice you have to make. You can even write a program to make that choice for you. And this is where programming really starts to become incredibly powerful. Now I'm not going to cover all of these in a physical manner, so I'm just going to give them all to you right now. So these are all of the type of operations you can do. Larger than, lesser than, larger than equal, lesser than or equal. You also have equal, not equal, and we'll use a few of them to give you an example. And then finally, and, or, not, as well as XOR. And we'll get into what all of these does, except for XOR. This basically returns true if one of the conditions are false and the other is true, which can be useful if you have a scenario for it. Alright, so let's declare a few variables. So we have age is equal to 24, name is equal to Jack, and birthday is equal to true. Cool, so we have an integer age, a string Jack, and a boolean yes or no true. Cool. Now let's say we have a bar. Now let's first say if someone is under the age of 21, they are not allowed to enter this bar. Then we can check if their age is less than 21, then echo you may not enter. Or enter. So here we're checking if this variable age is less than 21. We could have even put a normal number here like 24. That's perfectly fine. Anyhow, so we're checking is this less than this? If it is, print this. Let's make the age 10 for now. If we run this, we will get you may not enter. But if we were to say 21, because this is only checking for less than 21. So 21 and older is perfectly fine. So if we run this, you'll see we don't get an output. So just by using an if statement, we've told our program to only do something if it meets a specific condition. Now let's say if someone's too old, they're also not allowed to enter. So we can say if age is more than 60. So if they're older than 60, then we should tell them echo you are elderly, may not enter. Cool. So now we have two if statements here. And take note of the indentation here. That's actually important. If you were to just do this, it might throw an error at you. Indentation is important. So you'll also notice here, this is not part of this top if statement because there's no indentation here. The indentation in nim is very important. So all of this is part of this if statement. But this is not part of this top if statement because it is unindented. Always take note of your indentation. If you're coming from Python, it's the same concept. What is indented is important. Alright. So now that we know that this if statement does not contain this if statement, they will run independently. So if we were to go 20, this bottom one will execute, but not this top one. Run it, you may not enter. And here if we were to say 610, then the top one will execute, but not the bottom one. Your elderly may not enter. Now let's say if they are not one of these two ages, they are allowed to enter. Because then we can just say echo, you may enter. But now we have a problem. We will now have to, if we want to make this one only execute if these are not true, we have to then go if age is more or equal to 21 or age is more or equal to 60, or not more or equal, but I mean less or equal to 60, then you may enter. So now we have three if statements. One for if they're older than 60, one if they're younger than 21, and one if they're older or the same age as 21, or younger or the same age as 60. If we run this, and let's say our guy is 32, now they are allowed to enter because they are not older than 60 and not younger than 21. So with this OR statement here, we can check if this is true or if this is true. And you can use brackets to make it a little bit easier, because now you can see, this goes first, then this, it checks them. So if either of these is true, then this will execute. But now we have a problem. What if we were to say they are 302? We'll actually get your elderly may not enter as well as you may enter, because OR checks if one of these two are true, not if both are true. So if this is a true value, but this is a false value, this will still execute because this one is true. So if yes or no, that's what we're basically saying here. So if either of these two are yes, true, then print this out. If we were to say and instead, then we'll say if this is true and if this is true, then execute this. So now if we were to run this, we'll get your elderly may not enter. But if we were to say 31 now, then we will not get that. We'll just get you may enter. And if we were to make them 18, then you may not enter. Cool. So we have just covered larger than or equal, less than, lesser than or equal, and or. All right. Now we can actually make this a little bit less to work with. For example, we can say elif, and now these two are one if statement. But this one checks. If this executes, then this will not execute. If this does not execute, then we'll try and execute this, but they cannot both be executed at the same time. To give an example, let's say we have this if statement, and here we're saying if their age is less than, or actually let's go here, let's say if their age is more than 18, right? Just ignore this piece of text here. And if their age is less than 21, now if we were to go here and we were to say 20, so it will fill both of these categories. We run it, then you get both of these values. However, if we were to say elif, which means else if, then only one of them can execute at a time. Your elderly may not enter. And the one that executes is the one that gets hit first. So if we were to say 10, this one will not execute because 10 is less than 18. But this one will execute. So now if we run this, you get you may not enter. So just as an example, that allows us to have two if statements that does not get in conflict with each other. Only one of those two if statements can run. You can of course have as many else if statements as you want. You don't have any limits, but take note, if one of them gets executed, the rest will be ignored. And take note, all of them should preferably have a different value. So this could be 22, 23, 24, 25, and so on and so forth. And didn't all need to check age. One could check age, the other one could maybe check the name. So here we could say else if name is equal to Mike, then you may not enter. And that's the wrong equal there. That should be 2 equals. And we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so now that we know that, we can actually use this to our advantage. Now we have this if statement here at the bottom. The problem with this if statement is every time we want to add another check here, we have to add it here as well. But because if statements are so powerful, we can add an else statement at the end, remove this, and there we go. Now it's all one big if statement. Else will execute if none of its upper components executed. So if you have 100 else if statements here, if none of them execute, then else will execute at the very end. However, if one of these else ifs execute, or if this if execute, else will not execute. So this will only execute, only run if none of the other if or elif ran. So if this and this did not run, then run else. But if this ran, skip these. If this ran, skip this and skip this. Alright. Now if you run this, we'll get you may not enter. If we make them 39, they may enter. If we make them 90, they may not enter. So it's basically what we had, but now there's less checks, and we don't have to worry that one if statement will execute when another should not be executing because this one has already executed. It's the same as going else and then doing this. Instead of having to indent this and do this, we can just do this, and that will make it easier on us as well. Now let's say we want to do a few extra checks here. Let's say if they may enter, we want to go if name is equal to Jack, then 20% off all drinks. And we want to echo this. So we're checking if their name is equal to Jack, do this, and then also do this, because you have to remember, if something is not part of an if statement, it will still execute. If I go here and say echo 1, and then I go here and say echo 2, we will always see echo 1 and echo 2. No matter what this if statement says, we will always see this because these are not part of the if statement. Same applies here. Because this echo is not part of this if statement, if it wants to be, it needs to be indented. Because this here is its own little block scope. Same with this. This is its own block scope. So if we were to go like this, then now this will be part of this if statement. And this if statement is part of this else statement. But they are not part of this core code here. Indentation is very important. Again, because this indentation says if something is part of something else. This also shows you can have an if statement inside of another if statement. Even up here, we could say if name is equal to Jack, this could be a special case, and then echo you may enter, you are a good customer. There we go. So you can have an if statement within another if statement. Now if we were to run this, we'll get you may enter, you are a good customer. And we'll still get 2 here because 2, and we just resize this, because 2 is still part of the normal code. It's not part of this if statement. If we were to indent it, it will be part of the if statement and it will not run. Alright, but you'll notice we still get your elderly may not enter. What we want to do here maybe is we could say if name is, let's try adding a not equal. If it's not equal to Jack, echo this, else this. So we have an if else in here. Of course, you could have said equals Jack, and you could do this. So this is if the name is Jack, do this. But you could also do not equal. So the name is not equal to Jack, do this. And take note of this equal symbol here. This is 2 equal symbols, not 1. 1 will reassign. 2 will check conditions. This is a very important distinction to make. Now if we run this, we get you may enter, you are a good customer. And in here we could say, let's say their name was Jack. Then they'll say your elderly may not enter. Let's say their name was Jack and they were 38, so they are allowed to enter. Then 20% of all drinks and you may enter. We might want to put this you may enter first and then say 20% off of all drinks, just to make it look like there's actually some order here. If we run this, then it will display in that order. And if their name was not Jack, they will not receive that message. So run this, you may enter, but not 20% of all drinks. Now let's say if it's someone's birthday, they also get 20% off drinks. Well, if that is the case, then we could say, or birthday is equal to true. So now we're checking, is their name Jack or is their birthday today? If it is, then print this. So this is again an example of an or statement. With this Boolean statement here, we can actually just go like this. This means if their name is Jack or if it's their birthday, because this is already true or false. Because going like this is the same as not having that there, because it will still check if this is a true value. You can also do if it's not equal to true, or if it is equal to false, Or you could go, or not birthday. Not here tells us if this is a false value, then it will be represented as true. If you were to open up nim secret here, which is a little command line, and we were to say let x is equal to true, x is a true boolean. Not x is false, because if something is not true, it is false. Not x would be true, because first here, this is true. If it's not true, it's false. If it's not false, it's true. So not will allow us to flip it around. So if it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. Alright, so if their name is Jack, or if it's not their birthday, they get 20% off. Something you might want to take a look at. Now let's say their name should either be Jack, or it's their birthday, but they cannot be both. So if I say XOR birthday, then it either has to be their birthday or their name should be Jack. But if their name is Jack and it's their birthday, they are not allowed to have a drink. But if it's their birthday and their name is not Jack, they are allowed to have a drink for 20% off. If their name is Jack but it's not their birthday, they're allowed to have a drink for 20% off. If we run this, we'll get what we expect, 20% off all drinks. But if we were to make their birthday false, meaning both of these will be false, then you may enter, it will not execute this. But if their name was Jack, they will get 20% off their drinks. But if their name is Jack and it's their birthday, then they will not get 20% off all drinks. Now let's say we check if it's their birthday and if their name is equal to Jack or their age is more than 30. Now this is a little bit confusing because what Python or what nim will do here is nim will first check, is it their birthday? If this is true, then it will try and check, is their name equal to Jack as well? If this is true, then if this is true or this is true, that's what nim will do. So nim will basically first run this statement here, the first statement it sees. So if this is true or if this is true. But in our case, let's say we don't care about this, we just want to check this. Now we'll check if it's their birthday and their name is Jack or their age is more than 30, then it will echo this. But by default, it will not do that. So you'll need to use brackets to specify what you want to be checked first. If you run this, we get stas because this executed as true. Cool. Now one more thing is you might want the ternary operator. So let's go let greet is equal to if birthday. So if it's their birthday, then greet becomes happy birthday. Else, welcome. So a ternary operator is when you have this if statement, but it's in one line and returns a value. In this case, we could have gone var greet is equal to welcome. And then we could have gone if birthday, then greet is equal to happy birthday. We could have done this, but as you see, now greet needs to be a var, which you don't necessarily want. You might be like me and you want to stick with let as most matches possible. So first, greet has to be a var, plus this takes up 4 lines, including the space here, but it could take up 3. But this takes up 4 lines instead of 1 line. And this actually might be a little bit more difficult to read than this inline if statement. So you might actually see more use in having this ternary operator around than using a normal if statement. But this is up to you. If you prefer to use a ternary operator above a normal if statement, then use it. Just don't go too overboard because they become very difficult to read very fast. But with basic scenarios like this, it is one of the best things in the world. And now we get happy birthday. If we were to make this false, we will get welcome. Cool. And that's the basics on if statement. Quite a lot to cover, quite a lot to remember. But I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next nim tutorial.